Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Wednesday, June 14th, 2023, also known as Flag Day. And if you'd like additional weather information, you can always go to weather.gov. That is the National Weather Service's online presence. It'll bring you to the map of the continental U.S., Alaska and Hawaii to the lower left. And on today's map, we find that there still are problems with the smoke from the forest fires up in Canada. There are many of them up in this region that are out of control, and the smoke's drifting down into the northern U.S. here, the upper Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin air quality alerts due to all of that smoke, suspended smoke, continuing to pour into areas of the nation. Further south, rather unusual, a strong severe weather outbreak here in the deep south across portions of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, including the threat for tornadoes as we go through the rest of this day and even into tonight, and then excessive heat across far southern Florida, areas of Texas, Louisiana. Red flag warning for critical fire weather conditions back here across southeast New Mexico, and then flood watches for areas of Wyoming. So we continue to have issues with high water across northern portions of the state. We had a delayed river breakup season following with the snow melt, and then some rainfall on top of that. We have a flood warning that remains in effect on the Sag River. Along the Dalton Highway, milepost 401 through 407 have been impacted. Areas of the highway have eroded, even losing parts of a lane, so the highway is down to one lane still, and that flood warning on the Sag River will continue through at least Thursday afternoon. High water also being reported on the Koyukuk Basin, eastern half of the Brooks Range, and eastern North Slope. We have some areas where roads have had damage along some of the culverts or near bridge areas, so we're still not completely through with the river breakup season in the far north. High surf advisory, Seward Coastline and St. Lawrence Island will continue through this evening into early Thursday morning, and a gale force front will bring some gusty winds and moderate to heavy rain, especially to the panhandle here as we go into Thursday evening and early Friday morning. Here's a beautiful image out of Coldfoot there along the Brooks Range, lower Brooks Range, broken cloud cover, 48 degrees. These areas have picked up some moderate rainfall from showers and isolated thunderstorms, which has contributed to the snowmelt runoff to the area creeks and rivers, making them continue to run at high levels. Wales is having some high surf. We've had a front move into the west coast there near the Bering Strait with strong south-southwest winds gusting 40-50 miles an hour. You can see the surf up there in the distance. Cool temperatures, though, just above freezing at 33 early this afternoon. So we have that high surf advisory in effect until early Thursday morning for the western and southern Seward Peninsula back through St. Lawrence because of those strong south to southwest winds, elevating surf 2 to 3 feet above the normal high tide that could lead to some beach erosion and certainly cause any unattended property down near the water edge to potentially get swept away. So keep that in mind. But areas of the interior you see here shaded in the lighter blue, these are locations where water levels will remain higher than normal, with some minor flooding still possible there along the Koyukuk River Basin and especially along the rivers and creeks, Chandalar, Colleen rivers. All of those here are experiencing higher than normal water, and we have the flood warning for the Sag River at least through Thursday afternoon. Fire danger is crept up. It'll be very high on Thursday through the Yukon Valley and up through areas of the Tanana Valley. The good news is, though, temperatures are not going to be super warm, nor are we going to have to deal with winds or scattered thunderstorms to start fires. So fire danger will be at least lower than normal as a result that what we might otherwise see for this time of year. Here comes the next low up out of the North Pacific. That energy is riding northeastward. It's going to impact areas along the Gulf Coast and especially Panhandle. Some areas of the Panhandle will pick up moderate to heavy rain, especially Thursday night, early Friday. Here's the front that is now pushing in out into the eastern Bering Sea and the west coast through the Bering Strait. That's the one that has the stronger south-southwest winds along and ahead of it. That's why we have those high surf advisories in effect through this evening and early Thursday morning. Here comes that low. It'll be passing south of Kodiak Island and then off toward the east as we get into Thursday afternoon and into Friday. So the front to the west side of the state will not push too much farther inland. It'll creep inland a bit more. There's going to be a shot of cooler air rotate its way down across the eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. It just kind of links up with this low that's going to be sitting here over the lower central portion of the Gulf Thursday afternoon, and then that front is going to wrap around and include and lift up through the Panhandle with some gale force winds along areas of the north central Gulf and into parts of the Panhandle. Otherwise, the interior could see some scattered showers and isolated storms, eastern Brooks Range on into portions of the Yukon Territory. And overall, not a real warm pattern, though temperatures along the Yukon River, central and eastern areas of the state will see a little warmer temperatures by the time we get into Saturday and Sunday. So lows generally above freezing with the exception near freezing some areas of the Arctic coast, and then back down, say, Point Hope down toward Wales could hover right around the freezing mark. Temperatures could creep back up near 70 for Yukon, Northway, and Fairbanks. Otherwise, cooler readings expected, especially along the western area of the Seward coastline. 50s, near 60 at best, probably mainly 50s in the Panhandle with the rain moving in later on Thursday. And then Friday morning lows will generally be in the 40s most areas, except for along areas of the Arctic coast and in the far west, the Bering Strait, looking for lows generally in the mid 30s. And then temperatures Friday afternoon should rebound a little warmer, back up around 70 toward Galena and on up toward as warm as 75 there at Fort Yukon. Anchorage area still struggling to hit 60 and cooler readings right along the Gulf Coast due to the extensive cloud cover and breezy conditions. So temperature outlook June 20th through June 24th, around and just past the solstice. We expect temperatures to warm a bit here over the Panhandle into the southeast interior, but stay below normal in the lower Yukon Valley and over the Seward Peninsula on the west side of the state. Precipitation should average a little below normal across the Panhandle then around and after the solstice, but across the mainland still averaging a bit above normal, with maybe slightly more so than normal from the Seward Peninsula, especially along and south of the Brooks Range, and that would indicate also the potential for some scattered showers and isolated storms there as we get through the solstice.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Let's take a good look now at your aviation weather. If you have a flight planned late this week, Thursday or on Friday, to start out Thursday morning, we expect VFR conditions across much of the central northern interior, especially along north of the Alaska Range. IFR increasing out over the lower Gulf back toward Kodiak Island, as low pressure will be moving from south of Kodiak Island up into the central Gulf by Friday. Cooler air has come in, cool, unstable air along the backside of this system, some mid-upper level energy and cooler air at the surface along the eastern portion of the Bering and southwest coast. So IFR conditions rather extensive. Thursday afternoon, we find IFR increasing across the Gulf and starting to spread up into the Panhandle. Certainly will do so Thursday night into Friday. Could be a few isolated storms with accumulus buildups and scattered showers here along the southeastern slope of the Brooks Range or Yukon Flats area. IFR extensive from south of the Bering Strait through St. Lawrence and St. Matthew. For Friday morning, widespread VFR conditions along the Brooks Alaska Range, especially through the Yukon River Valley across much of the mainland. And then IFR conditions rather extensive Friday morning, and rain, lower clouds here across the Panhandle, low sitting here over the central Gulf. We continue to have a cooler north-northwest flow along the eastern portion of the Bering Sea. And for Friday afternoon, widespread VFR conditions across much of the mainland, especially up through the Yukon Valley, as well as the Alaska Alaska Range and Brooks Range. IFR should at least shrink in coverage and be confined more in, say, the northern panhandle around Chilkoot and White Passes and in there toward Yakutat Bay. Still widespread IFR just off and hugging the Arctic coast down through the Chukchi Sea and then out over much of the central Bering through the central and western portions of the Aleutians. Generally, VFR conditions are expected at Anatuvik Pass in the Brooks Range with some scattered cumulus buildups that could lead to showers and perhaps an isolated thunderstorm afternoon and evening. Same thing, Adigan Pass could be an isolated shower storm pop-up as we get into the afternoon and evening. Lake Clark and Merrill, generally MVFR conditions are expected throughout the day on Thursday. Also at Rainy Pass MVFR, but as we round up through the central and eastern Alaska Range, Windy Pass, Isabel, and Mentasta Passes should see VFR conditions prevail throughout Thursday. Further south across the Copper River Basin, VFR conditions at Tanita, and then as we drop down toward the Gulf, Portage Pass, generally MVFR conditions are expected during the daytime on Thursday, and Chilkoot and White will see MVFR conditions on Thursday, but will likely drop to IFR as we get into Thursday night and on Friday with increasing moisture, precipitation, lowering ceilings. Freezing levels aloft are fairly low, at or below 2,000 feet here. The northern Bering Sea, eastern Russia, this intrusion of colder air will be drawn in around the low that's going to be taking shape and pulling up into the central Gulf. So it'll keep this area cool and unstable down into the Alaska Peninsula. Some ridging, though, is allowing some warm air across northwestern Canada back into the central Yukon Valley. So these areas could actually see a little warmer temperatures up around or a bit above 70 as we go through Thursday. Greatest threat for icing, considerable moderate icing will be possible perhaps near Shelikof Strait here and around the upper end of the Alaska Peninsula and the Alaska Range. And then also the outer coastal areas of the Panhandle above 8,000 feet as the frontal system pushes in with thicker cloud cover, deeper moisture, and the heavier rain that'll be arriving, especially Thursday evening and Thursday night, being driven by this 150-knot southwesterly jet max at 30,000 feet. We also have on the backside here over the Bering Sea, helping to transport the cool air over the eastern half of the Bering. We have winds out of the north 90 to 100 knots at 30,000 feet. As we bring it down to 700 millibars or 9,000 feet, the dominant low-pressure circulation here in the Gulf Thursday afternoon. So this moisture feed will just help the moderate to locally heavier precipitation overspread the Panhandle into British Columbia. Meanwhile, a couple weak low circulations back toward the central Bering and up into eastern Russia, and then at 3,000 feet, here's the low circulation closer to near where the surface low would be. And we have some stronger winds ahead and along the frontal system that'll be pushing up in through the Gulf Coast, winds 45 to as high as 60 knots at around 3,000 and 5,000 feet. So that translates to widespread, considerable moderate turbulence along the Gulf on Thursday with perhaps isolated severe turbulence, especially there near the entrance of Cook Inlet, surface to 6,000 feet. We also have moderate turbulence areas of the lower Chukchi Sea, Seward Coast, and then also down along the eastern Bering or eastern Aleutians, surface to 4,000 feet.
Where are we at today? Follow Ken around has been the name of these videos. So we're at the National Tsunami Warning Center. What a treat I have for everybody today. And people don't think about it. National Weather Service. It's more than weather. We're water. We're space weather. We're tsunamis as well. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Summer, how you doing? So introduce yourself to everybody and tell everyone what you do here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Summer Ohlendorf. I'm the Science and Operations Officer here at the National Tsunami Warning Center. So I'm keeping an eye on all of the data that comes into our center, making sure we're using the best science to look at it, figure out what to do. And I also keep our staff sharp and well-trained and ready to respond to any event we might have.
And I know you do a great job because in my time here over the last hour or so, super sharp folks, absolutely amazing to be able to talk to everybody here. So here's the deal. Give it another quick. All right, so something happened. We've got something going on. So take me through the process. What happens? This could be in the middle of the night. You're on shift. It's not like you have days looking for a hurricane or a week, right? It's not like you're looking for a severe weather event 2-3 days ahead of time. This just happens, right? Everybody, it just happens. Earthquakes just happen. So there's no notice. Right. What do you do? Something bad happens.
So if the earthquake is here, first of all, we're dropping, covering, and holding on during the shaking itself. But afterwards, we're responding and we're trying to figure out where the earthquake is, how big it is, and then what that means for the tsunami hazard. So we use these systems to look at the earthquake data. Our systems are set up so that we know, based on the earthquake information, pretty quickly exactly what that's going to mean as far as what alert areas we want to set up for any tsunamis. And so we want to make sure that we're confirming with our coastal emergency managers and the public that we get out the messages that we need to quickly and that those are received and understood.
Okay, so we talked to the earthquake, and why are you so passionate? What brings you to work every day?
I love using science to actually help people. So this is my way of knowing about something right when it's happening and using those logic and reasoning skills to actually make decisions to help keep people safer.
That's amazing. I love that. So, okay. All right, so we have an earthquake. We got work to do. So we're going to go this way. So we've got an earthquake. We're going to talk about how we're going to detect a tsunami. What are we going to use for tools? How are we going to do that? And who are we bringing in? We bring it.
We're bringing in our lead scientist.
Come on. All right, so first of all, name and introduce yourself to everyone, and what do you do here?
Hi, Kara Sterling. I am a lead duty scientist here at the National Tsunami Warning Center. I spend a lot of my time working on improvements to the forecasting model and also coming up with new ways that we can provide impact decision support for our partners during tsunami events. So there's a lot of information. We get it really quick in the first 30 to 60 minutes and trying to condense that down into something that we can provide you to make decisions with. So.
And I don't have to tell you, because you already know, right? Alarms and bells, maybe Summer's yelling from across the room. I don't know what happened, but so all of a sudden there's an earthquake.
Yes.
What are you doing? What are you doing? What do we do?
We've got a big event. We want to know what the possible impacts are. One of the first things we look at are expected history and our early forecast. So we will actually take that event. You can see over here we've modeled a 9.3, which is a really large earthquake off of Kodiak. Something like that would put our entire coastline from Aleutians, Alaska, all the way down to California, Mexico in a warning. So that's a big event.
And there isn't one.
Yeah.
So those watching,
exercise.
we're just exercising here. Okay.
You see a lot of red. It's not real.
Okay.
We can show kind of where the majority of the energy will be directed for something like this as well. And we're going out with a message letting everyone know that we have issued a warning. I've pulled up one of the messages here. So we review that, we send it out, and it goes out across the lines, all sorts of ways people will get the message. But then we're forecasting. We're looking at water levels, coastal tide gauges, offshore deep pressure sensors. We're bringing that in real time, and we're adding it into our forecast. Anything that goes above 1 meter for an estimated wave height, you're going to be in a warning. So we're constantly looking at what we can see for coastal water levels and out in the deep ocean to see how big that tsunami is and how it's propagating. We do use two forecast models, a simple one over here called the Alaska Tsunami Forecast Model, and then over here we have SIFT. This model especially has some neat additional products. So with the SIFT forecast, not only can we see wave heights and the directionality, but we are also looking at expected flooding for a local area, as well as the time series. That time series in relation to the tides at that area, and also tsunami currents, where you might have hazardous harbors and where navigation will be difficult.
And if you got a current, a boat might not be able to get away or be able to travel to the dangerous situation. So amazing amount of science here. I'm going to ask the same question that I asked Summer. I mean, look at this, the science that you do, and you turn it to service, which saves lives. What brings you to work every day? What's your passion?
You know, I love that it's applied science, and that I feel like I'm doing something that makes a difference, and that I'm giving back. So
it's amazing. I just got goosebumps. So okay, we had an earthquake. Running models, looking at how much water, analyzing things, look at the energy propagation, looking at water levels are going to be. Wait, we got to let people know. We got to let people know. So what products products are issued. We're going to do that next. We're going to come right over here. So yeah, first of all, introduce yourself and what do you do here?
Hi, I'm Ben Heath. I'm a duty scientist here, so I stand watch and look out for earthquakes or any other activity that might indicate tsunamis.
So I'm an emergency manager somewhere. I'm the general public. I'm at home. All this analysis, amazing science has gone on. What products are issued? How do I know something bad's about to happen?
So if there was a big earthquake, we'd have 4 different kinds of alerts that we could put you into. The first one would be a warning. That means get to high ground immediately. You follow evacuation signage. This means we're expecting something, inundation of about 1 meter. We're expecting waves of about 1 meter or more. So that's something that is very impactful. We want you to act immediately. We could also put you in an advisory. That means stay out of the water. Stay away from shore. We're expecting something in the 1 to 3 feet category, so it's something that could have impacts, but isn't massive impacts or massive waves. We also have a watch. That means prepare to take action. Tsunami is possible. It might be several hours away, but we want you to prepare now so you can act if you need to. So that's just a prepare stage. And then if it was a moderate-sized earthquake that we really don't think is going to produce a tsunami, we're going to put out an information statement. That might be, hey, I felt something. Is this something I should be worried about? This is no tsunami is expected, but you might have felt that.
That's amazing. So really connecting the science to the service part of it. Same question as I've already asked. What brings you to work every day? What makes you so passionate about this here?
I really like making these decisions with limited information and then trying to talk people through those decisions and help them understand what I know in real time.
It's really important to meet everybody here because most of the time we don't think of tsunamis as part of what we do. It's a big part of our mission at the National Weather Service. And to think about this, I want to reiterate this once again. It's really important. Back at the Hurricane Center when I was there, I mean, we see it a week ahead of time, right? So we have some preparation time. I think that's important. Severe weather event, we've had quite a bout of tornadoes. We start looking at those outlooks 3-4 days, a week ahead of time as well. This just happens. So it was really important to come here, introduce everybody to what's going on. Think about it, from 0 to 100 miles an hour, just like that. Wait, they're faster than that. How fast do they go? Wait. How fast do they go?
They go airplane speed in the deep ocean.
Okay, just like that. So we're going from 0 to airplane speed, just like that type of thing. So I wanted to introduce to the amazing people at the National Tsunami Warning Center, amazing a bunch of scientists, and providing that service to save lives. And I think it's amazing that we really look at this and just realize they're 24/7 thinking about keeping you safe from tsunamis. So this has been Ken Graham live right here in Palmer at the National Tsunami Warning Center.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. And the remnant ice across the lower Chukchi Sea and along the northwest coastline down to outside there of Kotzebue Sound and through the Bering Strait. We've had stronger winds with a southerly component as a result of a front that's worked its way in from eastern Russia. So the ice will continue to drift northward. And also we have the seasonal melt-off that we would expect, especially now that we're approaching solstice rather shortly. But look for conditions, ice to continue to melt off and water to become more open here as we go through the next week and through the summer season. In the areas of the Bering, we find that remnant ice around St. Matthew almost gone, and still some lingering there between St. Lawrence Island and the west coast there of the Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, the other story will be some gale force winds with a gale force front working its way on up into the Gulf Coast and Panhandle. On Thursday, we'll see southeast winds 25-35 knots with gusts as high as 40 knots, say there across areas of Stevens Passage. Waves could be 8-9 feet at Dixon Entrance, 3-4 feet there through Stevens Passage and up through Lynn Canal. The outer coast, winds generally 25 to 30 knots, though some gusts could be upwards of 45 knot gales out of Gustavus there. And waves out in the Gulf within 15 nautical miles of shore could be as high as 9 to 12 feet, especially as you go up toward Cape Suckling. And then on Friday, winds will not be quite as strong, 20 to 25 knots from the south, waves generally 4 to 5 feet in the inner channels. We're going to have quite a bit of rain moving in for especially Thursday night and Friday morning, and still lingering into the day on Friday. South winds 20 knots, turning southeast to east once you get west of Gustavus and Yakutat, and waves running generally 8 to as high as 11 feet. Winds will be as high as 40 knots out of the northeast off of Kenai and Kodiak City, with waves 10, 11 feet in through areas of the northwestern Gulf. Northeast winds 20 knots, 4-foot waves Prince William Sound. Northeast winds 25 to 30 knots along the length of Cook Inlet, with waves 6 to as high as 9 feet down toward the entrance. And on Friday, winds come down, variable winds 10 knots in Prince William Sound, waves a couple of feet. Winds are going to shift more around toward the west-southwest, as high as 20, 25 knots there at the entrance of Cook Inlet, with waves running 8 to 9 feet and 4 feet there in the upper end of Cook Inlet once you get north of Kenai. Now, across Kodiak Island on Thursday, because of the low's position out here in the Gulf, north winds Shelikof Strait 35 knots, 12-foot waves there, but more of a mixed bag. We have another little weak low that is out toward Bristol Bay, and variable winds 10 knots, turning west-southwest 15 knots down toward Cold Bay and False Bay, waves 4 to 6 feet on the North Pacific side and 3 to 5 feet on the Barren side. And then winds across that region, Kodiak Island through the Alaska Peninsula, will be generally out of the west, 20 to 25 knots on Friday, waves running 4 to 5 feet on the North Pacific side and 5 to 6 feet on the Bering side. Winds across the Aleutians on Thursday, variable 10 knots way out in the western Aleutians, but generally west winds 15 to 20 knots central and eastern Aleutians, waves 5 to 7 feet on the North Pacific side and 5 to 7 feet on the Bering side. Winds will try to turn back around toward the southeast through the central Aleutians at 15 knots, though still westerly toward Dutch Harbor on Friday. And then winds variable out toward the western Aleutians around 10 knots or so. Waves generally 4 to 6 feet eastern central Aleutians and 3 to 6 feet on the North Bering side, rather, as we go through the day Friday. Across the southwest coast, easterly flow out of Norton Sound and the Yukon Delta, 15 knots. Winds turn, though, northwest to west, St. Matthew down through St. Paul, with waves there 4 to 5 feet. And then on Friday, generally we're looking for more northwesterly to west winds along the coast from Norton Sound, especially the YK deltas, with waves running right around 4 feet. Along the Arctic coast, look for winds to turn northeasterly Utqiagvik down through Point Lay, and then more easterly through the lower Chukchi Sea at 15 knots, as well as through the Bering Strait. And on Friday, winds will generally be out of the east-northeast 10 to 15 knots along the Arctic coast, turning northerly through the lower Chukchi Sea and Bering Strait, right around 15 knots as you go onto just the north side there of St. Lawrence Island.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.